We're going to have a fun Jerry Ratcliffe show here today. I'm Chris Graham, joined by Jerry Ratcliffe, the Hall of Famer. And, it's in some ways a slow news week, at least from the talent acquisition standpoint. We've had a lot of shows lately talking about both football recruiting in the transfer portal, basketball recruiting transfer portal. This week, not as much of that news. There is some recruiting news we'll hit a little later on. But we're going to talk about the ACC Spring Meetings here at the start. And Jerry, there were some rumblings, there were some headlines coming out. A lot of, from what we understand on Monday, there were some barbs flying back and forth in the room there. Where do you want to start with the spring meetings and kind of things playing out the way they did?
Well, I guess, Chris, it all started back with the Florida State AD more than a month ago.
Right.
Talking about how that they were exploring jumping to another conference and how they need more money to compete on a national scale and return their football program back to where it once was under Bobby Bowden. Although I don't know that will ever happen again, because there was only one Bobby Bowden. But that's where it started, and apparently there was a lot more under the surface than anyone realized. And a couple of national writers came out this week and right before the meetings and revealed the Magnificent Seven, of which Virginia is one, looking to talk to other conferences, SEC, Big Ten. I don't know if they talked to anybody else or not, but about the possibilities, and we still don't know how far that went. The ADs, for the most part, have kept a pretty tight lip. They've revealed a little bit of stuff, but coming out of the meetings, they seem to be on a united front and want to move the ACC forward. Now, who knows how much they're not telling us and how much that they're going to continue to explore other options in the future. But for now, anyway, it looks like that the grant of rights contract is pretty ironclad, which we thought going in. Maybe they've found a loophole that no one's aware of, but if they have, they're not talking about it. And it sounds like to me that the main thing that came out of there, Chris, is that they're going to try to find a way to give to end the equal distribution of funds, which really grew the ACC and made it as strong as it was for so long. I guess Gene Corrigan was the one that came up with that many years ago, and that's not going to work anymore. And apparently, some of the schools want a bigger piece of the pie, and other schools that don't produce as much revenue in the college football world or in NCAA basketball tournament are probably going to have to find a way to tighten up their budgets a little bit.
Yeah, let's on the official level. Yes, that's where things are. The ADs and Commissioner Jim Phillips left the meetings on Wednesday with sort of a unified kumbaya approach. We're all on the same team. There's talk about the revenue distribution model being changed, but the only thing that I think that I saw that really came out of it concrete was an agreement, at least, to move forward with if a school or schools make the college football playoff, they'll get a bigger piece of that pie, with an agreement to look down the road at maybe also dividing up then the TV money, the ESPN broadcast deal money, figuring out a way to divide that up differently too. Florida State, Mike Alford, the AD there, has outsized expectations of what his school's athletic profile is. He said that Florida State is 7% of the league and 15% of the name value of the ACC. And when you look at the TV ratings just for football the last few years, Clemson is, not just because they're in the playoff every year, but Clemson games have outdrawn significantly the Florida State games over the last few years. So you wouldn't be surprised by that because Florida State's had a down few years. But That's at the official level. One thing that Jerry, I had to wrap my head around. I've been trying to wrap my head around for 3 or 4 days. Our friend David Teal, the another Hall of Fame sports writer, just like yourself, was at the meetings, and he talked with Whit Babcock, the athletics director at Virginia Tech. He also talked with Carla Williams, who kind of brushed him off, saying Whit speaks for me too. So now, since she said that, let's just say that Whit is speaking for her and for Carla, and for himself and for Carla. Whit acknowledged that Virginia Tech, and then since Carla said he's speaking for her too, that those schools have been engaged in small group discussions, larger group discussions about the grant of media rights. And then also when David asked Whit, had Virginia Tech been involved in any discussions with other conferences, he said no comment. No comment. He didn't say, yes, we've talked with other conferences, but he didn't say, no, we haven't. And so that tells you that they've been talking with other conferences. Now, I'm speculating here, Jerry, but it seems to me that if Virginia Tech, for example, looked at the grant of media rights, they had their lawyers pouring it over and going through it, they wouldn't have started talking to, let's say, the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12, unless somebody on their legal staff said, we can get out of this. So let's start talking about what our options might be. And if I'm the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the SEC, I'm not sending somebody to meet with Virginia Tech or Virginia or UNC or any of those other Magnificent Seven, wasting my time, wasting my resources, unless there's something that can happen there. So it's just a little a puff or two of smoke, Jerry, but I'm sensing that there's at least that there that makes me think that there's more to this than what we heard from the ADs and Commissioner Phillips on Wednesday.
Well, they're clearly not telling us everything, and that's purposeful. I'm sure that they've hidden things rather well, and we know how tight-lipped ADs can be. So yeah, I mean, I don't doubt at all that they've been talking to at least the Big Ten and in the SEC and in some form, or had one of the groups that they're working with talk to those conferences. They've hired an outside group, right, to look at some various things. I can't remember, it was a weird name.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're definitely looking at all their options, and we don't know what all their options are or how handcuffed they are, but ESPN makes you wonder what ESPN is thinking, because just listening to a couple of shows driving back from Atlanta yesterday, I heard some people say, well, nothing can happen unless the ACC expands. Well, somebody brought up the proposition, well, if Notre Dame joins the league, then that opens up the grant of rights contract with ESPN. They could renegotiate that, which I guess would open a Pandora's box. Not only could the ACC expand and renegotiate its contract with ESPN or others like Apple or Peacock or some of the other streaming services, but I guess it also opens the door for teams to jump and go to another league. So it seems like a kind of scary future out there to me for what could happen. I guess someday we could, like you said, we could wake up and the ACC is no more, which would be a shock to my system, having grown up with knowing nothing but the ACC in terms of my personal life, but and countless millions of other people who are in the same boat. But yeah, it makes you really wonder what in the world's going on, and what is the end game? What do all these people see 20 years from now, or 15 or 10 years from now? What do they see? What do they want? Do they just want one mega conference or two mega conferences and divide it up like the NFL to where there's subdivisions and playoffs and endless playoffs, it seems like. To me, as a sports fan, that just doesn't seem like a whole lot of fun. I don't know, it loses its appeal to me.
I think at the individual level, if let's talk about, since we cover Virginia primarily, Carla Williams, the athletics director, Jim Ryan, the president of UVA, and of course the UVA Board of Visitors looking at this. You're looking more at UVA's ability to compete. And, and as far as the revenues go, currently the ACC pays out roughly $37 million a year to its member schools from its TV deal. The SEC and Big Ten are in the 55 million range on their now expiring deals. By 2028, 2029, which is only 5 years away, I guess, 5.5 years away, the discrepancy is expected to be more like $50 million a year between the TV payouts, TV rights deals payouts from the two big conferences now and then the ACC schools. So if you're Carla Williams, Jim Ryan, the UVA Board of Visitors, you're looking at that and saying $50 million difference between what we get paid and what Vanderbilt gets paid, between what we get paid and Rutgers gets paid, much less Kentucky or Alabama or Michigan State or Michigan, any of those, the Ohio State, the bigger schools. And so, what does that mean in terms of our ability to continue to compete at a high level? And of course, at the end of the day, college sports, it's about competing and competing at the highest level you can, but then also having your alumni, your fans continue to be interested in, if the ACC is a distant third, right now we're within hailing distance third. If we're a distant third to those big two, that's hard. It makes it tough for Tony Bennett, for example. Can he fill all of his assistant coach positions? Does he have the same travel budget, recruiting budget? Same for Tony Elliott, same for Brian O'Connor, et cetera, the swim coach, everybody. And so if you're Jim Ryan, if you're Carla Williams, you're doing what you can do to look out for the best for your school and for your brand. And you multiply that then by those other 6 of the Magnificent Seven. They're all doing the same thing. And that's what Mike Alford is actually right. I criticized him for overstating the value of Florida State's brand right now, but he's making a great point when it's tough for Florida State to compete when they play Florida every year in football, and Florida's getting $20 million a year more now. They'll be getting $50 million a year more in 5 years just from their TV deal. If there's at all a possibility you can join and make the same amount of money and compete on an even playing field, you owe it to yourself to at least look for those opportunities.
I also heard, I think it was Wes Durham, I heard yesterday on an Atlanta station, say, well, Florida State hasn't exactly helped itself when he said, when you're paying former football coaches $19 million in payoffs that you owe them, Mike.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a problem too. But yeah, I don't know. It's I know you got to have money to compete and stay competitive, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens coming out of these meetings in terms of if they do go away from the equal revenue sharing and cut out some of these other schools that don't make as much money. And the one thing that puzzled me is that, and maybe there was nothing to it, but somebody said the Magnificent Seven or Eight, whatever it is, was thinking about creating their own conference. Creating it. Wow. How?
I could see it. No, so let's just speculate here.
Unless you add other teams. And are you going to add other teams that are better than the ones you're booting out? I don't know.
What I threw together for a column on Augusta Free Press, I'm just pitching Jerry's columns, but I actually wrote something today that may be of interest. It's all speculative, of course. The only way any of this would make any sense is if ESPN were to convince the 8 this magnificent 7+1, which is Louisville, to just jump in mass, basically vote to dissolve the ACC with ESPN's blessing, and then join the SEC, but not really join an SEC that would then be a 24-team unwieldy, everybody's playing everybody conference. Then the SEC would have to be 3 8-team subconferences. So it's pretty much just going to be the old Big Eight would be, you put like Texas A&M, Oklahoma, throw LSU and Arkansas and some others in there. Then have the core old SEC, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, throw Miami and Florida State in there, throw Clemson in there with South Carolina, and then create a sort of a new ACC with, what would it be? Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Carolina State, and Virginia and Virginia Tech. I had them all. I had it broken down to 3 8-team conferences. That's effectively sort of a mix of the old Big Eight Southwest Conference from way back in the day. Then you're really, your core SEC down in the Deep South, and then sort of just a brand new ACC that would, get those old Big East teams out, those old Big East schools out, and replace the Big East schools with Tennessee and Kentucky. Vanderbilt's got to go somewhere, so we'll bring them along, and then throw the 2 Carolina schools, the 2 Carolina, in-state schools, and then the 2 Virginia in-state schools. Actually, Jerry, I mean, if that's not going to happen because it just makes too much sense if it were to go this way. I mean, if things are going to change, that would be the change that would preserve for us as close to a feeling like an ACC as we could possibly get, and then you'd get an SEC, get an old Big Eight in Southwest. So it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, ESPN's not going to give all the speculation this week, Jerry, has had like UVA and UNC thinking about going to the Big Ten. Why would ESPN let UVA and UNC go to the Big Ten, which is a Fox broadcast property?
Right.
There's no way they'd let that happen. If they're going to do anything, they're going to move the ACC schools that they own the media rights to another conference where they own the media rights to, and the only one they own all the media rights to is the SEC. So if anything happens, that's the only thing that can happen as far as I'm concerned.
You would think so from a business standpoint. Yeah, no question about it. It would be like the old Southern Conference, Chris, from the
Pretty much, yeah.
40s when they had like 30 teams, and which eventually became the ACC and the SEC and somebody else. But I mean, good gosh, history repeating itself.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. I remember reading about that once. The old Southern Conference had all those from the Mid-Atlantic down to I guess Louisiana and everything in between. And pretty much we would just be doing what we did 80 years ago. the old guys
all
had
be
it
on
right.
TV now.
That's right. Yeah. The old guys had it right. So it's all speculation at this point. But I will point out, I've observed this to a couple of people that I've been talking with about this. This time last year, May 19th of 2022, and I'd even go back 2 years to May 19th of 2021. That year, we had no idea Texas and Oklahoma were talking to the SEC. And last year, we had no idea that USC and UCLA had been talking to the Big Ten. And so we do have ideas that 7 at least ACC schools have been talking to somebody. There's smoke. That's all it is. It's just smoke. We don't know if it's fire there yet.
Yeah, I'll never forget walking into the ACC meetings 2 years ago. And a guy who I didn't know, he was talking to a friend of mine from Grandfather Mountain, who Jim Ryan had brought with him from the Big Ten to run ACC's finances. And they were in the lobby at the I think we were I guess we were still in Charlotte, yeah,
Charlotte, yeah.
And he's the one that broke the news to me. He said, hey, I just heard on the radio coming in that Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC. And I mean, that floored all of us. And then, like you said, last year, we were all floored even more when it was, I think, even a bigger jump with Southern Cal and UCLA going to the Big Ten, which seemed impossible. Really, if you stop and think about it, but it's reality. And So I guess if that can happen, anything can happen.
Yeah, and so I guess what we're saying there, Jerry, is the timing is probably around the ACC kickoff. If anything's going to happen,
It seems that way.
we're going to be on our drive down 85 between Greensboro and Charlotte, and we're going to get some word about something or nothing. But the timing is probably around mid-July there, as far as that goes. So,
Well, we'll have to be on the lookout this year when we're driving down to Charlotte.
exactly. Yeah, keep the sports radio on, keep the phones buzzing, and keep communications back and forth too between me and Scott German, you and your son Scott Ratcliffe. We'll keep each other informed. So let's switch gears. This week, a couple bits of news. We'll talk the recruiting in a second. I wanted to just, though, Jerry, bring in this week was the NBA Draft Combine. It ended yesterday, so a 3-day event in Chicago. Reece Beekman looks like he availed himself pretty well. He had 15 points. They played 2 scrimmages in addition to the drills that were done, the Q&As with the individual players, things like measurements. You know, Reece, we found out, is actually 6'1.5", not 6'3". They did, their runs and their leaps and all that kind of stuff. But on Wednesday, Reece had 8 points and 5 assists in his game. Didn't shoot the ball too well, but yesterday actually shot pretty well. 6 of 11 from the field, 15 points, 4 assists, a couple of steals. And from my review of what the basketball writers who were covering the event had to say, there were lots of positive comments about Reece as far as how he looked. Still no sense of whether or not he'll improve his stock enough to get drafted. It's, we've seen him anywhere from late second round to undrafted, but the early returns look pretty good for Reece.
Yeah, the only mock drafts I've seen were the ones that came out prior to those scrimmages, and he wasn't in the top 60 in one of them. I think somebody said he was in the top 48 in one that they saw, but I don't know where that came from. But yeah, I mean, if he could play like that, 15 points and 8 assists, I mean, that's what else would you want from a guy who has everything else that you need in a player? So perhaps he has played his way into the conversation, and perhaps he won't be back. And that would be tough for Virginia, but good for Reece Beekman because he'd be making some money.
Now, he did tell one reporter, a 24/7 sports reporter who was covering for the national website there in a one-on-one interview that, he's got a couple of post-combine individual workouts scheduled. So I guess that's early next week, and he'll make a decision on that. He's got until May 31st to decide whether or not to stay in the draft. Also, though, the reporter asked him about UVA's roster additions after the season, and Reece said, yeah, we lost 7 or 8 guys, but it looks like we got a really good roster back. So if I came back, I'd be coming back to a good situation. So it seems like even just from there, he's torn. He knows he has a couple of post-draft combine workout set up, but he can fall back and be a part of something good at Virginia too. So a lot of us will be waiting on pins and needles to see what he does, and certainly rooting for him if he goes to the draft, rooting for him to do well there. If he comes back, we'll welcome him back with wide open arms.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he what a great addition that would be if he decides to come back. I mean, that could be a pretty good basketball team with him at point guard. So we wish him well, whatever his decision is. But wow, it would be fun to watch him play one more year, because I think we haven't seen the best of Reece Beekman yet. And I just think it'd be fun to watch. But whatever the best is for Reece and his future, I hope he makes the right decision.
If he does come back, I want to see that guy who played, especially yesterday, the draft combine. He had some big numbers there. So I want to see more of that Reece next year if we can.
Absolutely. Man, can you imagine 15 points out of him on a semi-regular basis?
Oh man, that would, with the roster they've got coming in, yeah, that'd be a welcome boost for Virginia basketball fans, no doubt. Hey, let's talk some more basketball news on the recruiting trail. Tony Bennett and his staff, now that it seems that, I was getting ready to say, now that it seems 2023 is done, I'm not sure that's the case. You had the story last week when Jaron Stevenson, who might reclassify to 2023, but they do have their minds and their eyes focused on some 2024 guys. And Tony offered a California guy in the 2024 class this week.
Yeah, Stevenson's supposed to visit North Carolina this week. I haven't read whether he actually followed through with that or not. I assume that he has or will. But I did see a report Alabama out of an Alabama site that used some of my story about Stevenson and talking about how that would, all the things his dad said really worked in Nate Oates' favor rather than Tony Bennett. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but anyways, we'll see where that goes. If he does visit Carolina this week, he's got a decision to make next week, I would think, because that would only leave him 2 weeks to get to somebody's summer workouts and enroll in school.
Yeah.
So that's a lot pressure packed situation for the Stevenson family. But you're right. Virginia hasn't slept on recruiting. They've offered 11, 12, 13 kids already out of the class of 2024. The latest is Trent Perry, which would be the second Perry in that class that they have offered. I don't think these guys are related at all. Perry's a 6'4", 175-pound point guard from Harvard Westlake High School in Studio City, LA. 4-star composite player by 247. Currently ranked number 69 nationally and the 4th best player in the state of California. It's pretty good. He announced it yesterday on his Twitter account, and it's interesting. He they've offered I think 4 point guards out of that class, including the Bliss kid that we mentioned last week. He seems to be the most complete player out of all those 4. He has offers naturally from UCLA and Southern Cal. Maybe he doesn't want to be in the Big Ten, play in the Big Ten and travel to Rutgers in Maryland, but also Stanford, Cal, Colorado, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Vanderbilt, Virginia, and others. He has officially visited Colorado. I don't know. I just don't understand why anybody of that caliber would want to go to Colorado to play basketball, or even to Vanderbilt for that matter. But and he visited Southern Cal just a few days ago. He's been to a UCLA Oregon game on an unofficial visit. So he's looks like he's starting to narrow his list a little bit. He's he's another one of those California LA point guards like London Parantes and Kie Clark. He's a little bigger and a better shooter, apparently. He's a good ball handler. Has a lot of on-ball toughness, which both of those guys boasted. And he flat out told on3.com that I'm an all-around player, a two-way player. I'll play both ends of the floor, whatever it takes. I'll defend the other team's best player, rebound, facilitate, and really can do it all. I've stayed in the gym working on all aspects, and that has really helped me perform. I watch a lot of Russell Westbrook. He gets triple doubles and has an impact on all parts of the game. I try to do the same. He was MVP of his league this past season. And in the state championship game in March, he finished almost with a triple double like Westbrook with 16, 10, and 8 rebounds. And he didn't miss a single shot in the semifinal game. So he looks like a complete player, Chris, and all these point guards that Virginia has offered, all of them are seem like I think they're top 100 players. The other one is Travis Perry from Kentucky. No relation again. Daniel Freitag from Minnesota, and Bliss from Pennsylvania, really out of Brooklyn. So those are four big time guards. I don't know that Virginia could go wrong with any of them.
And I'll put a sales pitch in here. One great thing that your son Scott does, updates on the site, and this is on the story about Trent Perry and the offer there. He has a graphic with the recruiting targets, and it's updated, and it's a job for him to keep up with, I guess. But a nice chart there with, of course, the name, high school. I mean, all their star ratings, some notes about the guys. It's a really, really handy resource that jerryratcliffe.com provides for readers out there. You can pull it up on the desktop, pull it up on your mobile phone, and get the latest on where the 2024 class is. That's a really neat feature you guys have.
Yeah, that was totally his idea, and he's been doing that for a while, and he does a great job keeping up with that, no question.
Let's talk one more bit of recruiting news, and we'll head over to the football side of things. And this more from the transfer portal, but Virginia picking up, identifying and meeting a identified need at defensive back. Tony Elliott getting a pickup from SMU.
Yeah, Sam Westfall, 5'10", 188-pound cornerback. Originally out of St. George, Utah. He played in 13 games for the Mustangs last season, started 11 games. Played in 7 games as a junior, 6 as a sophomore, 1 as a freshman. He's a guy that's going to come here, Chris, with a lot of years under his saddle. He played in 2018 as at Mesa Community College, I guess, out in Arizona. Played in 8 games, redshirted in 2019. And then played in 2021, 22. So this will be his 6th year in college. So he's got some experience under his belt, and he picked Virginia over over Utah State, Coastal Carolina, and Old Dominion. And he's the third defensive back Elliott has gotten through the portal, along with the kid from Clemson, Malcolm Green, whose younger brother, I guess Mike, is going to be coming in as a true freshman. Both of them out of that highly respected Highland Springs program around Richmond, which produces players every year. Good to have your foot in the door there. And another kid, Tavon Kyle, out of Iowa State. So they've shored up their secondary a little bit, which they really needed to do after losing some really good players. And so that actually brings Virginia up to the 85 scholarship limit. So I don't think we're going to see any more additions to the present team unless somebody decides to bolt, which is still a possibility because Cam Kelly did. What is it with these Carolina guys? Cam Kelly came here from Carolina, had a cup of coffee, and then bolted and went back to the transfer portal. I don't know where he ended up. And then the Caleb Love.
Oh yeah, Caleb Love
jumped from Carolina into the portal and signed with who was it? Michigan,
yeah.
And now he's back in the portal again. So
the story there got me by surprise too. It was because Michigan wouldn't accept credits from North Carolina, and so he wasn't wasn't going to be academically eligible. My thinking is that isn't Carolina like a pretty good academic school for Michigan not to be accepting credits?
Well, they're touted to be on the same level as Virginia. I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually the case or not, but that's what they say.
Yeah, that's so he didn't necessarily bolt. He was kind of forced out. Wow. I mean, that, and of course for Juwan Howard, the coach up there, he's losing 3 or 4 guys in the NBA draft. He lost Hunter Dickinson to Kansas, as it turns out now. And now he can't, the one guy he picks up off the portal admission says you can't get him.
Yeah, that was bizarre. And does kind of leave Michigan in a lurch. No question about it.
Yeah, too bad for us, I guess, right? That the ACC Big Ten Challenge is no more. One of the ACC schools would have probably a nice night with Michigan coming to town. So, but yeah, that's bizarre news. I guess Caleb Love will have to grace somewhere else and take his 20 shots per game to some other program.
I'll
But
gotta give a shout out, I guess, to the men's tennis program. They were got off to a rocky start and lost the doubles point yesterday to Kentucky, and the match was forced to be delayed by rain until this morning. And Virginia came back and won, beat Kentucky 4-2 to advance to the semifinals. So that was a big boost for Virginia men's tennis. Obviously, one of the premier programs in the country.
I've got news on Cameron Kelly. Let's see here. So he's now going to Louisville.
Okay.
He's continuing his tour of the ACC. I'd forgotten this part, but the little story I just picked up here. He originally committed to Virginia Tech when his position coach who'd recruited him changed jobs. He reopened his recruitment, so he never actually went to Virginia Tech. That's when he ended up at Carolina. So Virginia Tech to Carolina. He spent spring practice with Virginia. Now he's going to Louisville. He's about a fourth of the way there as far as being part of all the ACC schools.
Yeah, no kidding. He's got a nice collection of gear.
He might get a job in the ACC office if there is one in a few years, because he'll be able to speak with experience about a wide range of schools there as far as that goes. Yeah, that's
if nothing else, you'll have a nice yard sale.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, go to Cam Kelly's house and you'll get yourself some really low priced, some good values on the his ACC gear there. So, hey, anything else, Jerry, comes to mind as we're maybe getting ready to wrap up?
I think we're good. Baseball team obviously trying to pull out a sweep at Georgia Tech so they could win the ACC Coastal. I think they have to sweep. Georgia Tech to win it.
I did the math on that last night when let's see, Duke lost to Miami.
Right.
Is that right? So now
Clemson beat Carolina, I think.
Yeah. So my math on it was if Virginia splits the last 2 games, they should at least tie, which they would if they tie with Miami. Virginia won the season, the series with Miami this year, so they would get the advantage there. If Duke beat Virginia head to head, so if Duke ties, but I think Duke missed a game, so Duke would have to hope for Virginia to lose both their next 2 games. Duke win their next 2 games. I think Virginia, to maybe make it really simple, I think Virginia's in good place. If they win tonight, they should go into tomorrow knowing what their fate is.
Yeah, and it looks like there's a possibility now that they may host for the first time in 5 years or something.
Right, at 42-11 right now, I would think that at least split this series. So split the last 2 games of this series, which would give Virginia a series win. At least hold serve next week at the ACC baseball championships. At least win a game. If you don't get to the knockout, at least win a game. If that would be at worst, 40, that'd be 44-13. If you're 44-13, their RPI should get them at least a 9 through 16 seed. They could still be playing for a top 8, which would give them possible home field all the way through the super regionals. That might be a stretch, but if they can, continue their hot streak, Virginia's won 7 straight. If they continue that hot streak, they might still be playing for a chance to host a super regional.
Yeah, that would be sweet to have them back in Disharoon Park again.
Yeah.
It's been a long time for Wahoo fans to see a postseason like that. So
I love June baseball in the park there. It's a great place to watch baseball.
It really is. It's a lot of fun. I kind of miss that. We got spoiled, I guess. They hosted so many times over a stretch of time that it almost became an expectation.
It was a rite of spring passage. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah, it really
there's
was.
another super regional coming to Charlottesville.
But yeah, I hope they do. That would be fun. It would
Hey,
give
men's
us
lacrosse is men's lacrosse playing this weekend. I think it's Georgetown,
Yep.
and they're playing up at Albany. I think it is.
Yeah, up in New York, upstate
Yeah.
New York. Yeah. So everything's going pretty well for the and then the men's and women's golf are tearing it up too. So Ben James was co-medalist of the Las Vegas Regional, which was pretty sweet. That guy has like 5 wins as a freshman, which is unheard of. Heck, he might be turning pro.
I was going to say we might not have him very long.
Better enjoy him while you can.
Exactly. Easy to turn pro in that sport. That's right. So as we're wrapping up now, Jerry, let's thank the sponsors for helping make all this possible.
Yeah, let's thank Roback, local sportswear company, activewear, great line. Go on our website, check out their ads, and get a discount. It's a locally based company. You see their merchandise everywhere. If you're on the internet, call up anything and it's flashing at you. So I can attest, it's very comfortable, colorful, sturdy sportswear, and you ought to check it out. And Aberdeen Barn, Virginia's finest steakhouse, terrific food, terrific service, great atmosphere. We really want to thank Angela and Terry for their support all these years. Goes all the way back to my radio show with WINA, and then when we switched to podcasts, they followed us to the podcast, and we really appreciate their support. And you owe it to yourself to go over there and get a nice juicy steak. So go by and tell them that Chris and Hootie said sent you. And also the Good Feet store over at Stonefield. It was just by there the other day. Jonathan, in fact, it was fun driving down to Atlanta Wednesday and coming back yesterday. Every station I picked up in the state of North Carolina seemed to have a Good Feet store ad on it with Jonathan Cotton's voice. I mean, that guy, talking about a guy that has a natural radio voice. Jonathan Cotton should be doing some podcasts, man. Well, I think he does do some, but he has a natural radio voice. It's unbelievable. And he's such a strong supporter of UVA athletics and through the NIL, and just a good guy in general, loves to help the community. And it's from Crozet. So even though his company's based in Richmond and it's all over the mid-Atlantic now, he's a Charlottesville guy. He's a UVA guy, and we appreciate him and everything he does to support us. So go by their store in Stonefield and give your feet a break. They have specially designed arches to help your feet feel like they're walking on a cloud.
Well, talking about the Aberdeen Barn is getting me hungry now. It's dinner time as we're wrapping up our show here.
I'm getting hungry too. I might be heading over there in a minute.
That's one of those commercials that worked on the people reading it there. But thanks, of course, to Jerry. Thanks to the listeners out there. Go to jerryratcliffe.com, augustafreepress.com for the latest news and, of course, UVA sports news. For Jerry, I'm Chris Graham signing off. Everyone have a great week.